Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at product render. However, before we jump there, I want to try something, so allow me to add a little bit of music to the mix. I'm trying to see if this works. Let me know in the comments if the music is distracting or not while seeing or watching this video. We're pretty much gonna jump straight into it. Let me go real quick here. And in the last couple of days, as I mentioned, a lot of interesting things have happened. Actually, I want to share some funny stuff with you guys. Last Friday, I got stung by a bee when I was going to the university to teach my classes. I'm not sure if you can see it right now, but the ring finger on my right hand is really swollen. It hurts like you know what. And I don't know what it happened, because when I got stung last Friday, I didn't get any pain or anything. But like a couple of days after that, this thing has become unbearable. So anyway, besides that accident, and of course the news that we've been having in the last couple of days, such as all of the new courses. We're releasing a lot of new courses. All of the instructors are finishing their courses for this month. I'm on my way to finish mine as well, so you're gonna have news about that one very shortly. Make sure to check that. But we're gonna jump into product rendering. I asked some of my artists here to help me with the products, because I've been flooded with work, and they were kind enough to create these things right here. Hey, where are they? Give me 1 second. There we go. So we have this water bottle. There we go. With its tap. We have a dropper. This one right here. And we have a cream. I gave them a very cool exercise where they actually had to think about like a brand and a name. It helped me to keep developing their creativity and stuff, and they created a very funny one. Let me know in the comments if you guys want access to these files, and I'll be happy to add them to our next to assets folder. That's a folder that's available. I've shared the link a couple times, so I'll share it again this time around. We have things from throughout all of the sessions. We have like the Majora's Mask, some Diwali lamps from last year, a couple of other things, textures like models. There's things that you can use, of course. So these are the products that we have, and right now I'm just going to select all of them. I'm going to assign a new material, and I'm going to assign a basic Arnold AI standard surface just to get something. You can see here, this is very common when you have two objects that are overlapping or really close together, like this sticker right here. And when the camera goes far enough, you are going to start seeing a little bit of that crisscross between the polygons. To fix that, you can go to your camera, and if you add a 1 to the near clip plane, you should reduce that. If we go all the way to 10, as you can see, we should reduce that as well. This also will allow us to get a little bit closer without clipping through the object, so very useful, the clip planes. Clip planes are like the areas that the camera is normally seeing. So if we talk about product rendering, this is one of those things that I do believe that a lot of people can do fairly early in their careers. I've actually like made quite amount of decent money throughout the years doing renders for products, for houses, for little like architectural renders and stuff. And you can see if we take a look at all of these examples, that there's one constant about product rendering, and that is clarity, right? We're not going for a cinematic look where things are like covered in shadows and stuff like that. We want to make sure to see what we are selling, right? So it could be a watch, it could be a furniture, it could be a drink like a tequila or vodka or whatever. There's a lot of things that you can do to show things. Nowadays, there's this very like interesting looking approach, which is a little bit more colorful. I used to do a lot of like this renders like here, very dull, very flat renders, just a white background or a black background. However, again, as time goes by and sensibilities change, people look for other kinds of stuff. So for instance, we have this one right here, which is a little bit of pink, a little bit of green, yellow, reds, and just a general thing. So there's 3 main things I would say for product rendering that you need to know, and that's camera, composition, and lights. Okay, of course the textures, the models, everything is very important, but where to place and what camera to use, how to create the composition for your element, and how to place your lights is going to be like essential for this whole thing. So let's start working on something here. I want to go for a I'm going to start with the camera actually. Let's just create a very simple plane. There we go. I'm gonna go to rendering and I'm gonna start with a camera. Panels, look through selected. I like to call my camera shot cam because I know this is where we're gonna be doing the render from. I'm gonna turn on the resolution gate, which is gonna tell me what I'm gonna be rendering. We're gonna do a full HD render in this case, so we can have a nice little composition for our thumbnail as well. But nowadays, again, with social media and stuff, there's a lot of compositions that are square, especially if you're gonna be advertising in Instagram or TikTok or now YouTube Shorts. You probably want to use like square compositions. So the camera has a really interesting thing, which is called the focal length. Some of you are already familiar with this. For those of you that are not, a focal length is pretty much the distance from the lenses to the sensor of the camera. The bigger the distance and the more lenses you have, the farther away you're gonna be able to see. And the lower the distance, the lower the lenses, the more you're gonna be able to see, but you're gonna have a very shallow effect. So for products, there's again several things. We can go really high to like a 90 and give a very orthographic, very straight looking composition. This is gonna give us a very like cemented, very organized effect. I used this, or I did this several years ago. I don't think I have it right here actually. This was a long time ago. It was probably like 2016 or something. But we did a tequila bottle, and we were using a lot of this sort of stuff, like a lot of really flat effects. We can go all the other way to the other side of the composition, to something like a 24, and this is going to give us a more dynamic image. Especially when we get close to the object, we're going to see more distortion going around, and as you can see, this is going to give us a really interesting effect. So let's think about the composition that we want. Usually when you think about compositions, you need to think where you're going to place things on your image. We can have a balanced composition such as this one, or we can have a skewed composition where we move something to one side or the other. I think I do want to have that. I want to move one thing like to other elements. I'm going to make this bottle a little bit smaller, and I'm going to play around here with the composition. I want the bottle to be on the front, and then these guys are going to be here at the side like this. I do think now the focal length's a little bit too much, so I'm going to go for something like 28, which is still going to give me a little bit of distortion, but not as much. And as you can see, I like to use the word we're charging, or we're pushing the balance of the image to the right in this case, which can be perfectly fine, because if we think about how this thing will be presented, like on a panoramic like advertisement, those that you see on the highway or roadway, there's probably going to be text here, right? Like it's usually going to be a little bit of text in this area to push or to see what's going on here. So let's play around with the background here. Usually for backgrounds we go for infinity planes. We've used this so many times here in the channel. It's one of the most easy ways to create something cool. We're just gonna extrude the edge right here, push it forward or up. Just push a couple of these guys up as well. Here in Mexico we call these things ciclorama. I'm not sure if that's the word in other countries, but it's just this, it's usually just like a thin piece of paper, white, black, there's a lot of different colors, and you use those to make sure that you don't get any harsh shadows. Now, if you want the shadows to be even farther away, we can push this a little bit farther away. Let's go to the shot cams, panels, and look through select. And this is important. When you show your client any sort of a progress shot or whatever, you want to make sure that you have options, right? Usually the magic number is 3 options. You show your client 3 options. And of course, from those 3 options, you're always going to have one that you like the most. In my case, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say this little thing, which is a bookmark. I'm going to save this bookmark. So this will be one camera shot. Another camera shot could be something like this. Like, hey, let's again push the products to the left or to the right, but let's have like an upper or a wider like a view from above, right? Which could work. So we save the bookmark, and then let's go for another one, which is going to be a really low shot, right? This makes them look a little bit more heroic, like if they're super important. And this will be the last like the bookmark. So we just click here. If you go view and you see your bookmarks, you're gonna have this one: camera view 1, bookmark, camera view 2, and the bookmark camera view 3. So it's also a super easy way to save camera positions in case you want to see your objects from different perspectives. Cool. So from these 3, you guys can decide which ones you like the best. I think I really like the third one. I think it looks interesting. Let's go with that one. Let's go with this one. It's a little bit more intense, more powerful. Now I want to talk about something really, really important, which my teacher back in the day, he was teaching us concept art and drawing. He used to call this tangents. So we know that we are fighting against a 2D plane, right? Like at the end of the day, even though this is a 3D world, we're going to get a 2D image, and we want to make sure this image looks as nice as possible. So when you have two objects really close to each other and the borders of the objects kind of overlap softly, like there's not a super big overlap, you create something called a tangent, where 2 points like pretty much point to each other or are very close together, and that kills the perspective, it kills the depth that you might want to find here. So for instance, a good option here would be to really cut this in like this, like really push the bottle so that it's overlapping nicely the cylinder, and that way it's a lot easier to see that we are indeed having an overlap. Okay, so be very mindful about tangents. It's a very common mistake that I still make. You can't avoid all of them. It's pretty much impossible to avoid all of the tangents, but as long as you can play around with them, that's important. You also want to think about positive and negative space for silhouette. So for instance, if we go here to the light options and let me add this plane to not to animation, to display layer. There we go. This is the silhouette that we're getting from the objects. It's not super clear, so I'll probably push the dropper to right around there to still have a little bit of overlap, but so that we can see each of the shapes as a different element. They talk about this, or we talk about this a lot in animation when we want to create this sort of stuff. Now let's jump into light. We're going to do a very quick light setup, and a very common mistake that people make is like, okay, I want this to look like a studio light setup. Why not just go to Polyhaven, go to studio, and grab any of this like lower like studio photographs that we might need? It can work, it won't always work, so be very careful about this. I'm going to use this one right here, this Christmas Photo Studio 2. We're going to go here, Arnold, Lights, Skydome Light. And we've done this process a million times. We just add this, connect this as an HDRI. Let's very quickly go to downloads and use that one right there. Perfect. And let's go to our options, Arnold Renderer, System, change this to GPU. We're gonna say Arnold and render. Right now, everything has a very basic material. We'll add the materials shortly. And this is what we're gonna have. There we go. So not bad. I like the lights that we are getting, but usually when we're working with an HDRI, that's one of the things that I don't love about the HDRI, is the fact that we don't have as much control as if we were to position the lights manually. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you take a look at this image right here, you're gonna see that the main like lights are these guys right here. And yes, we can move them around and maybe let them hit the image from the front, which is going to give us this sort of effect, quite different, right, from what we had before. But again, we don't have as much control. So I actually like to use this light as my field light rather than as the main light. So I'm going to go to exposure, and I'm going to bring this to something like a -3 exposure. The cool thing about exposure in negative numbers is that if you guys know a little bit of math, you know that if you multiply two negative numbers, you get a positive one. So by doing -3 and like using exposure or doing I'm not sure if it's in an exponential multiplication, we still get light. It's not the same as if we go to intensity and put it in 0, then we get no light. That's why intensity should always remain at 1. So I like this, but I would like this light to be a sort of a rim light. So I'm gonna move this thing around a little bit so that we get the light from the side, even more, I would say. So something like this. Now what's also gonna happen, and this is quite interesting, is even though we have the plane is not really affecting. This is like an infinite sphere, so you're not gonna see where it cuts. But this light right here is now behind this corner right here. Like if you can imagine the scale of this thing changing, right? It's now behind, so we're gonna have a little bit less light. That's why the image looks a little bit darker, because we don't have that light anymore. So I really like this one. Here's where also you can play along or play around with special channels. This is a little bit more advanced. This breaks the way physical light works, but it's a great way to control your stuff. If you show this to your client, they're like, I like it, but the highlight is too much, we can go to the specular and say, hey, I don't want this light to contribute as much to the specular color. And we can pretty much make this a flat light that only contributes to the color, or make it like normally shiny. So again, if we feel like this light is giving too much shininess or reflection, we can play around with this one. Now we need to define where our main light is going to be. And for products, again, we don't want this sort of cinematic look. So I'm just going to grab a big plane right here. The bigger the plane, the softer the light. And we're just going to have one light coming from the top, like this. Something like that. Of course, if we render right now, even though it's a very big light, we don't have enough exposure, so we need to push the exposure up, or the intensity, whichever one you prefer. And since these guys are modeled, I think, to real world scale or quite big, I might need to push this to something like a 16 or so. Probably even more. Let's go 18. There we go. Now we can start seeing a little bit of light. Let's go 20. That's better. Let's go 22. Remember that each number that we add is a lot of light. So 22 to 23, it's not just one like a point more. It's like a whole step. It's exponential growth. Let's go 23. 23 is perfect. Again, we want to go for light, like soft shadows pretty much everywhere. I'm gonna make the light even bigger because I don't want the background to be losing that effect. And there we go. We have this. Now that we have the lights, this is where we need to again think about composition, think about presentation, and I can definitely see that it's a little bit too stretched. So that the focal length that we're using, it's a little bit too much. So I'm gonna go for something like a 35, and I'm gonna position these guys right here, or maybe even like a 55 to go for like a more straight render, something like this. I know we lose a little bit of that sort of like epic sort of look, but it's gonna make things look a little bit cleaner as well. Let's push this here. This one definitely push it a little bit up, so we can see the proper shadows. And there we go. This looks a little bit more presentable, if you wish. Now we can add the last light, which is going to be our rim light. And this rim light is important to separate the object from the background. But in this case, I'm actually going to do it in reverse. Normally, we point the rim light towards the object. Right now, what I want to do is I want to hide. Oh, let's go there. When you're ready with your camera, by the way, one thing you can do, there's a couple of tips. You can lock it, so just right click and lock selected, so you can't move it anymore. And this guy right here, you can actually have the scale set to 0. And as long as it's there, it's still gonna contribute the light to the scene. You don't need to see it, which can be a little bit uncomfortable for some elements. So I'm gonna go Arnold, lights, and we're gonna do an area light. It's gonna be a small light, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna hide this light behind the products like this, okay? And we're gonna point it towards the back of the wall. Kind of like having a little reflector here on the back. So if we render, oh, let's go here, and we go to the options of that light, we should be able to start pushing the exposure. We need a big number as well, so probably something like a 20. And what that will do, as you can see, is it will shine light to the back of our scene, okay? And that light is also going to help separate the objects from the background, because since the background is lit a little bit more, we're not going to see it as much, which is, again, a really, really nice and easy way to fake some more depth to the image. So look at this. Again, if you think about this, we can have a text or the logo of the company right around here, and then we're going to have a really, really nice composition. Now let's talk about materials, because materials are really, really important. We already have a good camera, we already have a good render, now we can think about materials. So let me navigate real quick to my downloads, because here's where I have the stickers, okay? So Liz is the name of our artist. She created the stickers. The name of the brand is Pepinosas. And it's a cucumber-based cream for, I don't know, skin safety or whatever. So we have 3 different stickers, and the interesting thing I want you guys to notice about the stickers is the color. What colors are we using? We're using this very vibrant, juvenile-looking pink and green color, okay? So first, let's like assign the materials to the elements. I'm gonna right-click, double-click the faces on this like big bottle. I'm gonna say, actually first I'm gonna, yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna double click and then select everything else, and to everything else I'm gonna assign a new material. Arnold, AI standard surface. I'm gonna call this plastic bottle. There we go. And now what we can do is we can assign the exact same color everywhere else. I'm gonna double click this and this, not the sticker, just the other. Assign existing material, plastic bottle, and same for the dropper. So this, assign existing material, plastic bottle. To that cap, to this cap right here, I'm actually going to assign a different material. Arnold, AI standard surface. I'm going to call this a shiny plastic. Okay. So if we go to any of this, guys, you're going to see up here that we have different materials. I'm going to go for plastic bottle. And here in plastic bottle, I'm going to go for a dark color. Let's start seeing how this looks as a dark plastic. So we'll save a screenshot. We render. And we can see how this plastic is going to behave with the elements, which is not bad. I actually like this one quite a bit. I do think I don't want to go like that dark. And again, here's where interactive render is great because we can find the exact color. Or we can go for another like fun color, like maybe this sort of like pastel green color. If we want to go for a more juvenile packaging, I think this one looks quite nice as well. Probably going to make it a little bit more yellowish. There we go. And it might be an interesting idea now to change the glossy effect, the shiny plastic, and make this black. So now when we render, this is what we're gonna see. And if we have this like concept or this element, it might not be a bad idea to repeat that same stuff on the other ones. So something like this. Okay. And again, we need to evaluate whether or not things are looking good. In this case, I think it's fine for a first approach. Now let's add the other elements. So I'm gonna grab this faces. I'm gonna assign a new material. It's still gonna be an Arnold AI standard surface. And on the colors, instead of adding a texture, we're gonna add one of the colors that we have from our elements. So this is the cream. There we go. Then again, assign new material, Arnold AI standard surface. This is gonna be the droplet. So that's the drops. And finally, assign new material, AI standard surface, and this is gonna be the the water. I think it's the water. There we go. Let's save real quick before anything bad happens. I actually need to set this project as a different one because I was working on other stuff. Where's the next to live? There we go. Set. Perfect. And here in scenes, we'll set this as product render. Perfect. So now if we render, we should see the stickers of the elements. There's of course going to be a translation into texture files that we need to do. There we go. So this one works fine. This one's working okay. This one's not working properly. So let's take a look at this one and see what's going on. We can directly go to the AI standard surface, shiny plastic. This one, standard surface 4. It seems like this guys right here either lost their UVs. No, we do have the UV. Let's assign the material, and it's, I believe, standard plastic 4. Because if we check this guy right here, that's the cream. Yeah, should be it. That's really weird. Okay, I'm not sure why that's happening, but that's fine. So the first thing I want to do, let's move this thing a little bit here. The first thing I want to do is I want to rotate a couple of these guys so that we are seeing them in the best possible light, literally. So something like that. Here, it might not be a bad idea to separate them a little bit and go to this side right here. And this one's a little bit, I'm a little bit curious. I'm not sure if we have like a double UV or something. No, it seems like we don't. Okay, well, just to keep it simple and again, to not over do the image, let's just delete the layer on that one. Now, when we take a look at the render, I'm immediately going to start seeing things that I don't love, right? Let's go to ShotCam. So for instance, the green plastic looks awful. So we can either change the plastic or change the color. Maybe we can go to like a black color. I think this looks a little bit more interesting. And again, if we think about the shiny plastic, well, why not like white or maybe pink? I think like this, like a crazy pink right here might be a, there we go. That's a lot better, right? Like it makes the product look a lot more interesting, and it gives us a really cool looking effect. So this doesn't look bad. It's quite interesting. However, the background now looks quite not interesting. Here's where we can start adding a little bit of more visual interest to the whole scene. Let's start first by adding a new shader. And this shader, again, we could go for like this sort of like green that we have, and that's gonna really make things pop. I think that's a great idea because it's really gonna make the whole elements show a nicer, more vibrant color. This is, of course, again, we're going for this super juvenile, super like colorful effect. And if we take a look at our color wheel, This is why knowing a little bit about color theory is important. I did a bit about color theory several months ago if you want to check it out. If we take a look at the color wheel, you're going to see that green and purple, they're not exactly complementary, but they're quite far from their wheel. In this one, they are complementary, magenta and green. So we will get quite a bit of contrast. However, you never want to push like things to the extremes. So I am going to bring the saturation of the green background back a little bit. And I'm going to increase the roughness because I don't want the background to be, I want it to be more like a matte background, something like this. And there you go. As you can see, we have a very clean looking effect. I also want to go to the bottles themselves. And if we go to the shiny plastic, for instance, which is the cap, I probably want to make the cap a little bit rougher as well, just a little bit. So we have variation from the caps to the main bottles. We could, of course, go to the main bottles, to the plastic bottle, and change things around. Maybe we do want the bottle to be green. We want to be like a dark green, something like that, right? I mean, it's an idea. It doesn't mean that it has to be that way. It's just something that we can do. We can lower the saturation here. You can see there's a lot of bounce light that's painting the bottles green. That's always going to happen with this kind of setups. So there we go. We have a really nice effect right here. Now let's talk a little bit more about composition and how we can even make this a little bit better. If we take a look again at some product renders, where are we? There we go. You're going to see that one thing that really helps, instead of just having one single object on the scene, is having variations in height, for instance, or having more objects. So since we're in the 3D world and we can keep things minimalistic, we can just add a couple cubes. Like let's add one cube right here, for instance. And let's do some supports for the elements. So this will be like my first cube. It's going to be right about there. I'm going to have this one be on top. And then let's make it thinner. Have it here, push it forward, for instance, a little bit, get it closer there, and now it looks like this thing is sitting on top. And then let's make a very small one, but it's gonna be like a little bit, just a little bit, like, well, not taller. Let's keep it like at halfway point between the cream and the water, so roughly about there. And of course, we're gonna have to grab the droplet and just get it up a little bit there. Imagine we're like actually building this set in real life. This is what we want to go for. We want to make sure that things match and that they're not like creating any weird collisions on anything. Now, of course, since this changed, we need to go to our render and see what changed. As you can see here, it definitely modified the proportions. So let's go to the shot cams panels, look to select it. Let's select everything here and unlock so that we can find our new plane, which would be something like this, I would say. So now if we take a render, you can see this looks way, way nicer. To keep things uniform, let's grab this, guys, assign a new material or existing material, and it's the last surface, which is the green one. And just by changing that, as you can see, we're going to get a really, really interesting effect. Now, what else can we add? What other elements could we add to this thing to make it even better? Well, for instance, this empty space that we have here, we call that a negative shape or a negative space. I don't love it, so I'm going to grab this bottle here and just move it so that, again, we create the tangents that we have. And as you can see, this looks, to the eye, it should look a little bit more appealing, right? Finally, we could, of course, add like 3D letters here. I don't have the typography, but the ideal thing would be to have like the typography in 3D letters over here to make it work the way we want. But there's still a couple of other things that we can do. For instance, why not add some primitive shapes? We already have these cubes right here. And we can add some of these cubes on other parts of the set. Like back here, for instance. Okay, let's go back to our element here. And as you can see, we're going to see some more construction there. We can even grab like one of this, duplicate it, push it, duplicate it, push it, and create like an abstract looking shape. We can add more stuff over there, like a little prop or something, but right now it's just to create like a little bit of a stair thingy over there. And the reason why this is going to be important, if we add this element, look at that. We get, not only do we get interesting lights and shadows, we also add a little bit of volume and weight to that part of the scene, which was being pretty much forgotten, or it was becoming displaced by the other by the main composition. Here, I'm gonna move this thing to the side as well, a little bit, just a little bit. And now when we render, this is what we get. Not bad, right? Not freaking bad, I would say. I do think some lights are a little bit strong, especially my main light. So the area light 1, let's go from 23 to 22. And this is, again, something that you're going to have to be changing constantly, because depending on the type of a project that you're going for, there might be a couple of things that change as you add more stuff. I actually think it was fine. Now that I see it with lower effects, it might look just fine. Now, the final thing that I want to add is I want to add another one of those like cube thingies, but now on the front. So I'm going to push this to the front, like right about there. Let's take a look at the camera, because we're going to have some like cubes right here. There we go, something like this. Now, why is this important? Why are we adding like more stuff here to the foreground? Isn't that gonna contaminate the scene a little bit? Yes, it might contaminate it a little bit, but it also will help us frame the whole thing, as you can see right here. Kind of like it might look like we're building a city, or like a little bit of a composition around this elements right here. And here's where the magic is going to happen. We're going to go into the camera, and we're going to add a couple of camera effects, which in this case is depth of field. So we're going to go Arnold. We're going to use a depth of field. And if we select like the butter droplet, you're going to see that this thing is 1,000 units, 1,083 units away from my camera. So the focus distance is going to be 1,000, let's say 1,100, because the other objects are a little bit, that's 10,000. 1,100, there we go. Now, if we render, you're not going to see anything, but as we start increasing the aperture size, especially if we go really, really high on the aperture size, let's go for something like a 10, you're going to see that we can blur out the background and the foreground. 10 is way, way too much. But we can try something like a 2, and that should blur, just slightly blur the things that are closer to the camera and farther away from the camera, and our objects should remain quite in focus, as you can see right there. Let's modify this a little bit. I'm just gonna rotate things a little bit to give a better framing here. This is the small little tweaks that you're gonna have to do. Clients are very, very insistent about this sort of stuff. They're always looking, of course, for the best possible way to show their products, and it's very, very common to have to redo a lot of stuff. Like when you see something works, they're gonna be like, hey, you know what, I really like that like flat plane, can we add more? You're like, well, yeah, we can, but it might break the composition a little bit, and you're gonna have to do it and make it work, because they're seeing things, and you want to make sure that you can provide those elements that they're looking for. For instance, here again, my eyes tell me to move a little bit more to the right, just a tad bit here to the right, but your client might be like, no, I liked it that way. It's just simple little tweaking things, and this is where opinions are like they come as a handful of opinions. Like everyone has a different opinion of what looks best, what looks worse. You're gonna have to find out by yourself what works and what doesn't. This one I think is looking quite nice. Now let's do a couple more things. First of all, we're gonna change this to a full HD. Full HD, there we go. And if we render, so of course we're gonna have more quality, right? And since this is a very clean render, very clean materials, we don't have roughness or textures or anything. Adding a denoiser, it's pretty much gonna give us a super clean effect. Look at that, amazing looking like render, super clean, no noise, everything's working very, very nice. If you're proficient with Photoshop, you would then bring this into Photoshop and start playing around with other things inside of the software. However, if you're not proficient with Photoshop, or you don't have Photoshop, you can do a couple of things here that might give you a very cool effect. First of all, we have the camera options, so lens effects. And we can add a little bit of vignette. Vignette will frame the elements a little bit, as you can see right there, and it makes it look really, really nice. And we can add a little bit of bloom. I don't like using bloom, as you can see here, because the light that we have is already too much. But if you want to add a little bit of bloom, this could be it. And we can also go to a color correct, and we can play around, for instance, with the saturation. To desaturate it, we can saturate it even more if we want like super crazy colors. And this thing, I think I want to desaturate it just a little bit. We can increase the contrast, which is going to make the colors more vibrant, or we can lower the contrast to make it a little bit softer. I don't think I want to move the contrast right now. And here's the interesting thing. We can do this individually for shadows, contrast, and gamma. So for instance, if I go here to the shadows option and I bring the contrast down, you're going to see that we lose a lot of the shadow intensity, which might be something that you're looking for. If you want your shadows to be a little bit softer, not as dark, we can bring the contrast, or we can bring the saturation down a little bit, and you're going to have slightly different effects. We could go to the highlights, for instance, and bring the contrast of the highlights down, or bring the saturation down. Like you can pretty much correct things right here. There's also the color curves. This is interesting because we can push the reds up or down. Okay, so we can create some interesting things here. Very common thing, for instance, is to go to the blue channel. And if we add a couple of points here on the blue channel, we can push the blue up on the shadows, but down on the highlights, kind of like an S curve. And then do the same thing on the red channel, but the other way around. We bring it like this. And that's going to create a tone map that's going to be slightly different than what we have. I don't believe we have, unfortunately, we don't have like sliders. So there's not going to be a way for you to control how much of this effect you want. That's why doing this inside of what's the word? Photoshop might give you a little bit more control. So in this case, I don't want to use any curves. I think we were in a really nice effect right here. And that's pretty much it, guys. This type of things, this type of renders took us 30 minutes to do them pretty much. This you can sell for a really nice amount of money to someone who's doing or who's promoting their products in the, in the Facebook and stuff. And it's way, I would say it's way more powerful than, let me check, like beauty cream photo. Because I've seen people like upload this to like a Facebook marketplace and they're like, hey guys, I'm selling this, this cream, just call me and contact me and I'll give it to you, or this sort of stuff. Like it's not bad, but getting a picture like this with your cell phone on your kitchen or in your living room versus having a clean render that you can produce in 30 minutes, you can offer this to the clients for a nice amount of money. Of course, it's not as expensive as an animation or anything like that, but you can get a really clean and nice result. So hope you guys like this. Again, if you want the assets, let me know and I'll be happy to share them on the assets folder. Remember that tomorrow we have our portfolio review. This weekend is portfolio review weekend, so we're gonna have stuff that we're gonna talk about. But with this, I fulfilled my promise. I've showed you guys how to do a product render, really clean product render. And next week, let's go back to some assets, shall we? So that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you very much. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.